All right, I want to talk about a topic that is a little sensitive, especially for those of you who carry a witch wound, but this might help you in navigating the current times and going forward, especially deconstructing religion trauma. So, I have been doing ancestor rituals for a long time. And I talked to a lot of my ancestors who were both Christian and pagan. And I started to inquire about the witch hunts as to why were witches so persecuted? Was it just sexism? Was it just the fact that, women who were pagan were uncontrollable and they needed a subservient feminine workforce in Christian society? Um, and so it's a lot more complicated than that. The answer was yes, they did need a subservient feminine work class. And women who could earn their own money through gathering herbs in the woods and having magical abilities, whether it was intuitive abilities or prophetic abilities, and then they were able to earn their own money. They didn't have to marry men. And that made the church feel as if these women would encourage other women to become more independent. So there was a lot of jealousy there. And I'm not saying that the church was any good capacity in the past. But I think you have to look at the difference between the focus of Christianity and the focus of ancient paganism. And it all boils down to the Hindu concept of moksha. And I just want to say, as a longtime witch, I am on the side of pagans. I think that they were unjustly destroyed. I think a lot of European indigenous practices were absolutely decimated. The amount of trauma that was enacted upon the European families through the church, the invasion of the Catholic Church, is still playing out today in the traumatic elements of the lack of spiritual connection to the land and to the ancestral matrix that you're seeing. There's a reason why Christians don't talk to their ancestors. It's because pagans did, and they didn't want to become pagan. And so talking to your ancestors was like a bad thing. And because once you start talking to your ancestors, you get a bigger picture. So, all right. So Christianity was sold as a moksha religion. It was a religion to help people transcend their previous moral structure into a better moral structure. Moksha means liberation. It is a religious or spiritual practice that helps liberate you from your base instincts, from being able to be ruled by your trauma bonds and your trauma archetypes. You now are ruled by morality, justice, goodness. That in turn makes a more civil and peaceful society. That's what we're all looking for. We're all looking for moksha. I mean, anyone who goes to therapy is looking for moksha. They're just doing it in a secular means, but they are looking to be liberated from their trauma responses. But before we had therapists, we had spiritual traditions. So what ended up happening was that paganism did not develop moksha. And this is wherein we have a lot of our problems right now. We have a lot of modern European pagan societies. Most of them are about, let's recover and try to recreate some of the ancestral indigenous practices of Europe. Let's try to revive these gods and give offerings and see if we can bring them back to life. But they're not addressing the issue of moksha. And so a lot of people in the pagan community are utilizing, like in the Germanic traditions, they're utilizing runes. They're in the Celtic tradition, they're utilizing oghams. And in some of the other traditions, they're utilizing those occult practices for either selfish reasons, psychic insight on others, sometimes nefarious reasons, how to curse, cause chaos, incite wars, incite rebellion, incite madness, or they're trying to get a lot of money, manifestation really quick, and regardless of like who you hurt, trying to have power and influence people. These are all very selfish reasons to be practicing the occult. And the reason why the occult can be such a dark place is because these technologies of the occult are incredibly powerful. They can change your mental process. They can change the way you think, the way your whole body acts. You can change your very DNA structure through occult practices. The problem is, if you're not doing it for moksha, you are going to be manifesting the worst parts of yourself. And this was something that I found really challenging, especially in the rune world and in the heathen world, where a lot of heathens, they had some amount of morality, some, by being just basic, decent people. But they were not utilizing the magic or the ritual structures to become better, to become more wise, to become more knowledgeable, to become more moral, and to liberate themselves from their trauma responses. And so I think one of the biggest challenges moving forward for paganism is they're going to have to ask themselves this question of moksha. Are they practicing their paganism to enlighten and grow their consciousness to become wiser, more peaceful, more balanced, more healthy of an individual? Or are they doing it just because it makes them feel good? Is it an hedonistic pleasure? Is it something that you just desire to do? And the reason why, if we don't ask these questions, we're going to keep butting up against the conflict with Christianity. Christianity is going to see us as a threat until we address this issue. Because while Christianity has its problems, they do, they have their problems and they have their corruption and they have their blindness. They are also a religion that is invested in very strong moral roots of our community. And if we don't address that, like, there's a reason why Christians don't necessarily go after Hinduism and they don't go after Buddhists. They don't like them, but they don't try to eradicate them. And the reason why is because Hinduism and Buddhism is a practice of moksha. And those people are practicing their spiritual traditions in order to become wiser, kinder, more strong, more spiritually sound, and more spiritually evolved. And I think one of the problems with the division between Christian and paganism is that neither are really acknowledging the parts of their religion that is purely hedonistic, that is keeping them locked in trauma bonds. Like, for example, one of the biggest issues of Christianity that is keeping it truly from moksha is the fact that they refuse to acknowledge that the whole Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is actually a narcissistic trauma bond. The fact that the Father sends the Son to die for everybody else, to take on the karma, the sins, or whatever of everybody else, and then that energy is transferred and transmuted through the Holy Spirit. That is the essence of a narcissistic trauma bond. And the reason why Christian families always have that one scapegoat. The scapegoat is the most empathetic person who acts like Jesus, and they are ritualistically crucified, either figuratively or emotionally, and then they are processed or, excluded, and everybody else feels good because they're reenacting the whole scenario of Christianity.